Welcome, everybody. It's Jarvcast episode 2. It's Halloween 2022. Happy Halloween, everyone. What a month it's been. It's been a long, wild one. We've had people getting crushed in Korea. We've had school shootings in St. Louis. We have war in Ukraine. The world's gone crazy. But we're going to try to make the best of it here at the Jarvcast. Jarvcast at gmail.com. Hit me up. It's World Series this week. The Phillies and the Astros. Now, I've always hated the Astros from back when they were in the Central Division in the National League, playing against the Cardinals every year. They had some guys named the Killer Bees, if you remember. Jeff Bagwell and Craig Biggio. And they killed us. And I hated them for it. But now they're cheaters, so I have a new reason to not like them. And, of course, the Phillies beat my beloved St. Louis Cardinals. So I hope that they win the World Series, making us look good. It's been a great week for the Cardinals. Nolan Arenado decided to stay and opt into his contract and be a Cardinal for the next 5 years. Now this is just huge because he could have became a free agent and made more money. The Dodgers or the Yankees would have paid this guy more money. He's the best defensive third baseman in baseball, maybe of all time. He's just incredible. And he's had a great, maybe perhaps his best offensive year too. So it would have been perfect for him to test the free agent market, but he didn't. He stayed with us. Thank you, Nolan Arenado. I hope we make it to where you are happy that you did so and you don't regret it. If we make just a few big moves, we will be contenders. It'd be nice to get a shortstop. But we could put Tommy Edman there and Gorman at second. I don't know what their deal is with Paul DeYoung, but they keep giving him a chance. And the guy just looks done to me. It's just get rid of him. But you're paying him a bunch of money. I understand. You're hoping that he turns it around. And I do too. But it might be time to move on from Paul DeYoung. And Waino's back. I say he's an old man and he's washed up, but he's younger than I am. So, and he's proven me wrong many times. I counted him out years ago, and Adam Wainwright keeps proving me wrong. The young guys can't hit his curveball. So he'll have one final season. So I'm glad that they're both back. And I'm excited to watch, hopefully, the Phillies win the World Series. I can tell a quick Bryce Harper story. Of course, he's becoming a legend there in Philadelphia. And, boy, I wish the Cardinals would have signed him a few years ago. But I was Uber driving in Baltimore, and I get a pickup from Cal, C-A-L. Now, and this was at the Blue Moon Diner, which is a great place for breakfast in Baltimore. And, of course, you see the name Cal in Baltimore, you're thinking of Cal Ripken Jr., perhaps the greatest Oriole of all time, Iron Man. Of course, his brother Billy Ripken had the famous fuckface Fleer card in '89. What a great time that was to collect baseball cards. But anyway, I'm going to pick up Cal, and quickly I realize the guy in my car is Bryce Harper. And this was when Bryce Harper was on the Nationals. He was in town to face the Orioles, and he was about to become a free agent, and he was about to get probably the biggest contract in the history of Major League Baseball. He was the guy to sign. And the rumor was he was going to go to the Yankees for $400 million. And so he's in the back seat of my car, and of course, I look at him the second time first time I look at him, I'm like, that's Bryce Harper. I turned back around and I said, Cal? Really? Like, that's the name you're going to use in Baltimore as a fake name to hide the fact that you're a baseball player? So I got a kick out of that. And he was really nice, had a good laugh, and of course I had to talk some baseball with him. And I eased in the fact that I was a Cardinals fan. And boy, would it be nice if the Cardinals could sign Bryce Harper. And he said, hey, you guys got some great fans. And I let him know, yes, we do, but we also have a lot of money. And we do. And we could have signed Bryce Harper, but we didn't. But anyway, we could have signed a lot of people over the last 10 years. But that's what we need to do this year. Make a big move. Get a Trey Turner or a DeGrom or a Scherzer or just a top starting pitcher. And we're contenders. But yeah, Bryce was a great guy. I talked baseball with him for about 15 minutes. And he took a regular Uber to a regular hotel. I was shocked. And yeah, he just he was shorter and smaller than I thought he'd be. But overall, just a cool guy. Just using the name Cal in Baltimore. I wonder what he uses in St. Louis. Is it Stan? And then it made me think, I wonder if baseball does that for all the players. Like, do you get a free Uber in every town, and whatever town you're in, they use the name of the great player of that city? Maybe. But anyway, I hope he wins. I hope the Phillies win, because fuck the Astros. And I say that jokingly. It makes me think of some friends of mine in West Virginia. They own a place called Oscar's Breakfast, Burgers, and Brews. If you ever go through West Virginia, it's a great place to stop. It's kind of like a metal place. They play metal music, and they got great food, and they love the Astros. And I'm sure they're loving the World Series right now. I was in a band with the guy that owns the place. His name is Lucas, and I'll tell a quick story about that because it kind of leads into what I'm doing today. we met. I don't even remember how I met this guy. Maybe I was. They had a pig destroyer sandwich. That's what it was. And I was driving through, and stopped into the restaurant, and I gave him some beers, and because we had some permanent funeral beers, and ended up having a good meal and hitting it off with this guy. And there's this gentleman online that was messaging me a lot, trying to get me to sing for his band. And I remember at the time thinking, what have I got to lose? Because I was always real particular about who I played with. I was always in bands with people I knew, or even family relatives, great friends. And this was going to be the first time I was going to branch out and just I don't know this guy, but he's really adamant about having me sing, and I'm just going to give it a shot. So I sing on this guy's record, and he's talking, maybe we should book some shows, book a tour, even commenting on my, I just have a normal Facebook message, and he'd make a comment saying, oh, let's go on tour. That should be us doing it. It's like, all right, man. So I'm thinking this guy really wants to, take this on the road. And, I want to go on the road too. Let's do it. So I started booking some shows. I booked a nice festival show for us, and started getting the momentum going. And this gentleman's living in Indiana, and I'm in Baltimore at the time. So he messages me that, our drummer has quit the band. Do I know anyone in the area that could join his band? And I'm thinking to myself, well, it needs to be someone close to Indiana, of course, because that's where the band's going to be based, and that's where we're going to have our band practices. And I thought about this Lucas from the Oscars, Burgers, and Brews. And he's a great drummer, so he decides he can do it and wants to do it. And so it's great. Now we got a drummer. Issues are fixed. Shows will go on. We started making a concrete plan. Like, this is our days we're going to rehearse, because I have a long drive to come to rehearsal. 8 hours to get there, 8 hours to get back. So I want to make sure the band's prepared before I show up. He doesn't want to show up and watch some guys try to play some songs, you know what I mean? So anyway, months go by, and they are, oh, hey, Scooter. That's Scooter, the cat. And months go by, and they say they're ready. They've played the set twice at the last practice. They're ready for me to come out. Great. And of course, this is all not coming through Lucas. I'm communicating to this gentleman. I'm not even going to say his name because I'm not a fan. So I finally show up to practice to meet this guy in person, and it's just an awkward experience. And they don't know the songs. He can't even play his own songs. As a matter of fact, during the first song, I realized the two guitar players aren't even in tune with each other. It was like a nightmare. So he was lying to me about performing the set and all this. And I had to set him down and say, hey, man, you need to get it's called a guitar tuner. And you two need to be in the same tuning. Like, I had to explain how to tune it was unbelievable. I couldn't believe it. I thought it was kind of a joke. At first, I was looking for the cameras. Like, am I on a reality show here or something? Like, this guy doesn't even know how to play his own songs? I remember going outside of my car, and his wife came out and was like, oh, it's going to be okay. It's okay. And I started thinking, like, why did I drive out here? What have I done? So anyway, the first rehearsal was a disaster. I think we made it through one song all the way through, and I'm thinking, this isn't going to work. I don't like when people lie to me, first of all. Why make up the fact that you could play through the set? But the curious thing was the drummer knew the songs, but the guy that wrote the songs didn't. It was very strange. So I, of course, let him know exactly what I just said. Like, hey, this is not cool. You shouldn't lie to me. Oh man, I thought you'd be upset if. Well, of course I would be upset if you didn't know your own songs. But anyway, I'm thinking, all right, we still got like a couple months before the shows. We can make this happen, you know? So we set up a second practice. I show up. It's not much better. We get through a couple songs. But we're going to be able to piece together a set, I hope, at this point, is my thought. But I'm still very upset that these guys don't know the whole set, you know. And I'm driving 8 hours to watch this. And it starts getting into, okay, now we got to get some T-shirts for the road, for the shows. And I put in an order for some T-shirts from Big D. Derek from Scour got some shirts together for us. And he doesn't want to pay for the shirts. He doesn't have any money. So that's when I'm like, okay, I'm not going to end up in the second city on tour to realize you guys are all broke. So I put together, this is what it's going to cost for gas. This is what it's going to cost to get to every show. This is what it's going to cost each member if every show's a disaster and we make no money. This is what it's going to cost us. And it really wasn't much. It's a few $400 or $500 total each member. But of course, we would have made a couple $100 here and there at the shows to cover gas. But anyway, I started saying, hey, guys, we need to have this money on hand before we go. Because I can't handle any more lies. And I'm not paying for this band to go on the road. So at this point, I get a van to just go on this tour, basically. It was really the reason I got the van I own today. And because that's going to save us money. So, of course, all the band members are like, sure, I'll have the money. And then the drummer, of course, pays immediately. And the two guitar players were brothers. And I guess they had already decided they're not going on tour. This is all just I don't know what it was, to look cool online or something. I don't know what they were trying to do. But they decide they're not going to pay for t-shirts or go on the road or play any of the shows, and that basically they're going to move on and continue the band with someone else. And at this point, the drummer and myself were on the phone talking like, what have we done? Let's just call it. And I remember paying him the money back. He's like, you don't have to pay me back. He's like, you paid for all these shirts and don't worry about paying me back. I'm like, no, 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 I'll pay you back. And I use those shirts to clean up my dog's urine and shit. So I use those shirts wisely. And yeah, this guy really, really upset me because I was ready to tour. I had the van ready. I had worked on the lyrics. I recorded the album, and just to have this guy lie to me, and his reasoning for backing out of the tour was that he had cancer. And okay, that's a legit reason. Okay, so I recalled I was a booking agent for one of his older bands. I messaged his older band, and I said, I wanted to chat. It turned out it was his relative was in this other band. And I tell him the whole story. I'm like, I'm sorry about, your cousin's got cancer or whatever. And he's like, oh no, he uses that excuse all the time to get out of stuff. That's how he got out of the last band he was in. He told him they had cancer because he didn't want to go on the road. I don't know if it's stage fright. Honestly, I don't care. But long story short, now I have all these weeks off that I'd planned on going on tour. And I got this van. And now I got nothing to do. And I was planning on moving. Didn't really have much going on in Baltimore at the time. And so I packed my stuff. And I've moved back to St. Louis. Moved to Belleville. And that's when I decided to start Nest. Because I'm like, I want to have a touring band it's mine. That I don't let anyone else control it. I don't let anyone tell me that I can't do something. Now, of course, if we can't do a show, we can't do a show. If the band member's not can't, they got plans, no big deal. But basically, I make sure everyone's on the same page, and then we do it. And it started with my buddy Tim, and this was, I want to say, late 2019. Tim had come up with a few songs, and I was just going to be the singer, was the idea. Because I'm in no bands where I'm just the front man. So Timmy was on guitar, and I, after a while, decided I'll just play the bass, and we'll be a three-piece. So we had a few band practice. We had a drummer named Larry, and we had a few songs going. And then I get a call from Tim. He said, hey, everyone's calling to my work sick. They got this flu, and of course this is February 2020, and it's the big COVID-19 thing. The next week, everything was shut down. Of course, we can't have practice anymore. Timmy's like, I don't have time to do this. And this is when I had first started dating a gal, and she played bass. So, hey, why don't you move to bass? I'll move to guitar. I'll start writing songs. Because, I was just in a room for months. Just like everyone else. And so we scrapped the 3 songs we were working on. I started writing new songs. I wrote the whole first record. And then at that point, the drummer was kind of like, this might be a little too difficult for my playing ability. And so I moved on. I hit up Lehman, which was an old drummer from Fulgora, early Fulgora days. And that's when we started really playing shows and ended up getting on the Full Terror Assault Fest, which thanks to them, that was a great show. It always is. I love going there. And And if you can hear in the background, we got Charlie and Winston. You may have heard Charlie whining last week on the Jarvcast. But I left the door open today, so hopefully Charlie doesn't whine much. But anyway, at that point, Nest is going pretty well, and drummer Lehman decided he's moved away. He's too far away to make it to practice. Found a new drummer at the rehearsal space we were rehearsing at, which I don't want to mention them either because I'm not a big fan of them either. And I'll explain why. So, the rehearsal space, we had rented a room and shared it with another band. And we were paying, it was $150 for the whole band. So we're a three-piece. We're paying $50 each to share this room with this other band. And it was great because we could leave all of our gear in the room. We didn't have to do a lot of loading in and out. And we can get to this room 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, anytime. So the other band decides they're out of the room. So it leaves us a couple months of paying double the price that we were used to. And of course, after a couple months of that, we decide, hey, we can't afford to do this. Let's just go to... They have a couple different levels of membership there, and you can go by the hour if you'd like. And anyway, we got a deal where each member was paying now $80 each to do less. So now we're paying more to do less. But the bass player, she is now working at the place, so she gets us a discount. So at the end of the day, we're paying a grand total of $160 instead of $150. So it was only $10 more for the band per month. But we don't get to keep our stuff in the room. We got to keep it in a shed and load it in every day and set it up every day. And we were only doing Sundays, so we were doing 4 days a week. And so after a couple months of doing that, we go and do some shows. We're coming back from a New Orleans show that I was talking about actually last month. We're coming back from that show, and I remember I was thinking, man, the band's, we're riding high. We're doing great. We had just done a 9-date tour a month before that, and it's coming to pay for rent. And the bass player and myself, we were living together and dating, which was a big mistake. And she decides she don't want to pay me anymore for the band practice rent because now we're going to break up. So, okay, you don't want to pay me, that's fine. You just pay your boss because, you work there. And that will make things easier. So you don't have to pay me. Well, she comes back and says, well, the boss won't take my money. The boss says I don't have to pay for band practice anymore. And that's when I kind of said, now, wait a minute. No matter what, we do everything three-way. We're a three-piece. We split all expenses evenly, and we pay out evenly. I don't get paid more than the rest of the band for anything. But when we rehearse, if it costs $4,000 a month to rehearse, we're splitting that three ways. And if it costs $5 a month to rehearse, we're splitting that three ways. Now, she's deciding I'm not paying anything anymore because my boss said I don't have to. And I remember saying, well, your boss doesn't run this band. However, I do. And we're not changing the rules here where you get to have, you don't have to pay for band practice anymore. It just doesn't work that way. So she quit the band, which I was glad she did because it was just too stressful. It was a big mistake in the first place. And I was glad she quit. But I wasn't expecting the drummer to go with her. But I remembered we met him there at the rehearsal space. And the lady that owns the rehearsal space had told him, you want to stick with this deal because the $80 deal is great for you because he gets to practice anytime he wants. He can come in and record his own. He liked to record videos of cover songs and post them online. And so I explained, well, that he can do that all day long on his own time. So we're rehearsing 4 days a week, 4 days a month, I'm sorry. And at the discounted rate, it would have been $10 an hour. So we're having 3 hours tops rehearsal. Long story short, we should have been paying about $80 to $90 a month at the most, split 3 ways, not 80 per member. So I broke it down. I presented to the band like, hey, we can rehearse the same amount of time for half the money. So this is what we need to be doing. This is the smart thing to do. And of course, the ex-girlfriend turned that into, oh, you're making this about you and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, this is math. The math shows that we should be paying less money. But what about he needs to rehearse on his own time? I was like, well, that's called personal choice. You can rehearse all day, all you want. And if we wanted, and this is when I brought up, if we want to do that, we should go back to the room where we can keep our stuff set up at all times, 24/7, because we're paying enough to do that at this point. Let's go back, find a band, get a room, and by this point, I'm just glad it's over. The drummer had great talent, but he had a lot of red flags. He had a steroid. He got busted with steroids. He's selling steroids. So any out of town or out of state show we did, which is most of our shows, he had to get okay from his parole officer. So this tour we were doing, I didn't even know if it was going to happen until like the week of the tour because he didn't have the okay from his parole officer. So it was constant stress. And that's where I'm leading up to where I'm at today. I got Timmy back in the band. He's on bass now. Now, he played in a band called Eli Stone back in the day, and they were huge in St. Louis during the new metal days. But Timmy and I went to grade school together, and he was one of the first guys that I ever jammed with on guitar. Probably the first guy I ever sat down with and said, let's start a band, when we were maybe in 6th grade. And I remember we would skip lunch at school. He lived not far from where we went to grade school. And during lunch, we would just sneak out, go to his house, play guitar, make like a ham sandwich, learn some Stevie Ray Vaughan or some Jimi Hendrix or some Metallica, and then go back to school and sneak into the lunch hour and like nothing happened. So got Timmy back. He's an old friend. Glad he's back. And then I also got Derek on drums now. And Derek Bone, he also jammed with Fulgora in the early days of Fulgora. And I've known him for years. And it's just good to have some professional guys that got their act together, that are my age. And we just went down and played in New Orleans, had a great show, had a great time. We went to a great haunted house. Of course, it's Halloween today, but we went last weekend to a private haunted house built by Phil Anselmo. And it's hard to explain how incredible it was. It had to take months to put this thing together and tens of thousands of dollars. And we were the first ones to really go through it, and we were being led by Phil into each room. I'd say there was like 14 or 15 different rooms with different, themes and tableaus. And, you got an exorcist room where Linda Blair pops out and her head starts spinning, and there's like the white-faced Satan in the background flashing on the walls. And then you go to the next room, there's a bunch of zombies and just, stuff popping out of the wall and scaring the shit out of you. It was just a blast. And I was expecting maybe a few of these rooms, and it just kept going and kept going, and it was incredible. And by the time you get out of it, you enter into the outdoors area, and You look up, and it's a cemetery, and of course, like I said, Phil's leading us through this thing, and he goes, "Wait for it. You're about to pass the cemetery gates." Just like, I mean, this is the greatest time ever. It was so fucking hilarious. And then he brings you into this cemetery, and there's graves and shit popping out of the ground, and it was just a blast. I wish it was open to the public, and I think they should open it to the public. And I mean, if they took this thing on a tour, like the House Core Haunted House tour or whatever, call it whatever you want, I would pay money to go to this. I'm talking, it's. We actually had a discussion, Derek and I, at the end of it. It's like, I'd pay 25 for this. I'd pay 30 for this. I mean, just to walk through it by myself, $35. But then having Phil lead you through it, that was just priceless. But imagine like a tour, like you could do a weekend, like Friday night's headlined by big band, Saturday night's headlined by another big band, and you know each weekend you got a different city. It would be a lot of work, but it would be awesome. I hope they do something like that, or at least make it open to the public at some point, because it's just too good to. It's like stepping inside the mind of a madman, basically. It was just incredible, and thanks for the invite. I know the Nesty Peeps enjoyed it. We had a great time down there. We always do. It was great to see the Scour Boys down there. That's the first time we've been together in a while. I'd say since the live stream we did live at the Lair. And speaking of the Lair, they've really upgraded that. They've tore out the walls, made it much larger. Going to be more room to rehearse. Uh, there's a vocal booth now, and got a new engineer in named Eddie. He's a good dude, and we're hoping maybe to get some recording done next year. That is the plan right now. So it'd be cool to get that new studio going down there. And the Scour Boys are ready. So looking forward to that. We got just another show offer for Nest for next month, November, and can't announce that quite yet, but that'll be nice. Do another show before the end of the year. Then it's gonna be, of course, we'll be next month talking Thanksgiving, and oh my God, it's gonna be Christmas before you know it. And that's when it gets busy at work for myself. If you don't know, I've been a waiter off and on for 25 years. And it is a stressful job, I must say. And it just keeps getting more stressful. And I know the complaints are, oh, everyone's understaffed. We really are understaffed. All right. If anyone listening wants to work in a kitchen, let me know. I got an opening for you. And the customers overall have been great. I think most of them understand and get it. But there's still a lot that just don't understand that, hey, we are understaffed. We cannot like if you're a table of 12 and you show up on a Saturday night to a restaurant without reservations, you got to realize that they're not staffed for your 12 top. They're staffed for what the reservations they have and maybe some walk-ins. But a table of over 4, if you're going out and you don't have reservations, try to make reservations. Do the restaurant staff, they're trying to help. It's just some people walk in like, hey, table of 12, and like we don't have a 12 top set up right now. like just in case a 12 top walks in. And so some people just, I understand, don't get it because they've never worked in a restaurant. But if you have, you understand. And it's just, we're dealing with the same stuff that we did for the last 20 years, but now we're doing it. Our dishwasher's not there tonight, or the kitchen's understaffed, or now we only have one busser instead of three. Every night it's something, and you just got to pitch in and do the other job. Some nights I'm back there doing a little dishes here and there. And I'm not going to say where I work or call anybody out, but I do want to say hi to everyone listening at work. I know I have a few listeners to the Jarvcast, and thanks for listening, Brolo. I want to say, uh, but and thanks to all the subscribers and everyone commenting. I'm shocked by the amount of people listening. Thanks to Higdy D for commenting. Terry, he was an old friend of mine. It was probably my first friend when I moved back to Troy in the 5th grade. And we lived near each other. And he was the guy that introduced Black Sabbath to me. So I grew up, I was listening to Ozzy solo stuff. And he was one of my favorites. Bark at the Moon. And just loves me some Ozzy. And he explained that Ozzy had a band before Ozzy, and I'm just, no way, I got to hear this. And he gives me the cassette and he says, listen to Iron Man. And I remember listening to that cassette and being like, oh my God, this is better than Ozzy. This is unbelievable. And I think that was the greatest hits, the We Sold Our Soul for Rock and Roll collection. And that just took me into a whole new world of, I'm now a metal fan, Black Sabbath. You're telling me this was happening back in the early 70s and late 60s? Like, wow. I thought everyone sounded like the Beatles back then. But thank you, Terry. What a great time we've had. When we were kids, man, it was all about watching some wrestling and playing Nintendo, and I remember he was one of the first guys that had a Super Nintendo in the neighborhood. And, playing NHL 94. And what times those were. What great times. And I see Petchy left some messages. He's a cousin of mine. Lived together for a while. We've had some wild times. Thanks for listening, Petchy. And thanks everyone else for listening. I hope to catch you next month. We'll be talking about how the Phillies won the World Series, hopefully. We'll be talking about Thanksgiving. We'll be talking about the Nesty Peeps and the Scour Boys. And hopefully we'll have a great month. Thanks for listening. Hit me up. Jarvcast@gmail.com. See you next month.